It was a warm evening, and the grand restaurant sparkled with lights, crystal glasses, and the soft hum of conversations. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee and sweet desserts, and the soft clinking of silverware added a delicate rhythm to the space. Guests in expensive suits and elegant dresses moved gracefully around the polished floor, laughing and talking as if the world outside didn't exist. The room felt alive with wealth and sophistication. Yet there was also an invisible tension, a kind of quiet competition in the air that made every gesture, every smile, and every word carefully measured. Among the guests, there was a man who seemed to carry the room's attention effortlessly. A millionaire with sharp features and a confident, almost arrogant way of standing. He surveyed the room with a slight smirk. He had wealth, influence, and a reputation for being both demanding and unpredictable. Tonight, he was hosting a private gathering for his friends, showcasing his taste and power. He watched the other guests with a critical eye, taking in the luxurious surroundings and imagining himself as the center of it all. Yet, amidst the fine wine, expensive dishes, and refined conversation, his attention was caught by someone who did not belong to the glittering world around him. She was a young waitress, moving quietly between tables with trays of drinks and plates of food. Her steps were careful, almost timid, as if she wanted to be noticed only as much as necessary. Her uniform was simple but neat, and her hair was tied back in a plain bun. She did not carry herself with the confidence of the people around her. Yet there was something gentle and deliberate in the way she moved. Every time she placed a glass on a table, she did it with a kind of grace that went unnoticed by most. But the millionaire's sharp eyes did not miss it. He watched her from across the room, a small, mischievous smile forming on his face. Something about her quiet presence intrigued him, and at the same time, he felt an urge to test her. He had a habit of challenging people, of putting them in situations where he could prove himself superior. And tonight, surrounded by the most refined people he knew, he thought of a way to entertain himself at her expense. He called her over as she approached a table with a tray of drinks. She glanced up, a polite smile ready, unaware that he had singled her out. He leaned slightly toward her and spoke, his voice low but carrying an edge that made her pause. "Can you play the piano?" he asked. She blinked, caught off guard. Her mind raced for a moment, unsure whether he meant a casual question or a challenge. She had played piano before, but in the safety of her home, where no one was watching, where mistakes could be quietly forgiven. The grand piano sat in the corner of the restaurant, polished black and gleaming under the warm lights. Its presence was commanding, and the idea of playing in front of this crowd, in front of this man, made her stomach twist. I can," she replied softly, her voice barely audible over the chatter around them. The millionaire's smirk widened, sensing both her hesitation and her courage. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the nervousness in the way she held herself. To him, it was amusing, an opportunity to see someone stumble in a world where appearances meant everything. "Good," he said, his tone dripping with confidence. "Come, play for us. Let's see what you've got." His words were light, almost teasing, but there was a challenge in them that left no room for refusal. The guests nearby glanced over, curious at the sudden attention on the waitress. Whispers started, small and speculative, as people wondered what would happen next. Some of them smirked, expecting a display of failure, a moment of awkwardness that would entertain the room. The waitress took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the tray down on a nearby counter. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, the invisible pressure of expectations and judgment. But she also felt a quiet determination. She had always loved playing piano. It was her escape, her private world of notes and melodies. And now, she realized, she had a choice: to shrink in fear or to step forward and show a piece of herself. She walked toward the piano, her steps measured and careful. Each footfall felt louder than it really was, echoing in her mind. The room seemed to hold its breath, the chatter fading into silence as the guests sensed that something unusual was about to happen. The millionaire leaned back slightly, confident that the outcome would amuse him, but there was also a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Even he wondered, for a brief moment, whether this quiet waitress could truly surprise him. As she reached the piano, she paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. She closed her eyes for a brief second, grounding herself in the familiar rhythm of her heartbeat. She remembered the countless hours spent practicing, the late nights when the house was quiet, and the music was the only thing that kept her company. Now, all of that experience and passion was about to be tested in front of a room full of strangers. Slowly, she pressed the first key, a soft note that floated into the air. It was delicate but precise, carrying a subtle confidence that surprised the onlookers. The millionaire raised an eyebrow, slightly intrigued. This was not the hesitant, clumsy attempt he had expected. The music continued, each note flowing naturally into the next, forming a melody that was both simple and captivating. The room, once filled with polite chatter, now listened in rapt attention. Guests leaned forward in their chairs, whispering in astonishment as the melody unfolded. The music was gentle yet full of emotion, capturing the essence of something personal and real. The waitress's fingers moved with grace and ease, as if the piano were an extension of herself. Her nervousness faded, replaced by a focused determination and the joy of playing. She was no longer just a waitress in a crowded restaurant. She was a musician commanding the attention of everyone around her. The millionaire's smirk began to fade. He leaned slightly forward, studying her more closely. There was a skill here, a natural talent that could not be ignored. His amusement turned into surprise, and a small hint of respect began to take root. The audience, too, felt it. The whispers of doubt turned into murmurs of admiration, as people began to realize that this was no ordinary performance. The waitress played on, weaving the melody with confidence and subtle emotion. Each chord resonated with clarity, filling the room with a sound that was both powerful and tender. The guests were captivated, some nodding along, some closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the music. Even the millionaire could not look away, his eyes fixed on her hands, tracing the movement of her fingers across the keys. As the last note lingered in the air, there was a brief moment of silence. No one moved, no one spoke, as if everyone were holding their breath in awe. Then, slowly, the room erupted in applause, a wave of genuine appreciation that washed over the waitress and the millionaire alike. The millionaire sat back, speechless for a moment, realizing that his plan to amuse himself at her expense had backfired spectacularly. The waitress smiled softly, a mix of relief and quiet pride on her face. She had stepped forward, faced her fear, and shared her talent with the world, even if just for a few minutes. The room, once skeptical and mocking, now looked at her with admiration. She had transformed a moment of potential humiliation into a moment of triumph, proving that courage and skill could command attention even in the most unlikely of places. The millionaire cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. There was no mockery in his voice now, only a reluctant acknowledgement of her talent. The guests continued to clap, some cheering, some whistling, all of them amazed by the performance they had just witnessed. The waitress returned to her work, carrying trays with the same careful steps, but now with a new confidence in her posture and her gaze. That evening, the quiet waitress had changed the atmosphere of the entire room. She had shown that talent and bravery could shine brighter than wealth and arrogance. And though she returned to her duties, her performance left a lasting impression on everyone who had been there, including the millionaire, who had learned that some things could not be bought or controlled. They had to be earned and felt. And so, what began as a challenge meant to amuse turned into a moment of unforgettable beauty, proving that true skill and quiet determination could astonish even the most skeptical audience. After the applause died down, the atmosphere in the restaurant changed. The guests, who had been laughing and whispering just moments before, now looked at the young waitress with a mixture of respect and curiosity. They whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief at how someone they had barely noticed could hold the room's attention so completely. The millionaire, still sitting at the edge of his chair, watched her with a mixture of surprise and grudging admiration. He had expected a moment of entertainment at her expense, but instead, he had witnessed a display of talent that left him speechless. The waitress returned to her work, carrying trays with a calmness that surprised even her. Her hands no longer trembled, and her steps were measured but confident. The once intimidating crowd now watched her with a sense of awe, realizing that her quiet demeanor masked something extraordinary. Even though she was serving drinks and clearing plates, there was an invisible energy surrounding her, a subtle power that made people notice every movement she made. The millionaire leaned back, trying to regain his composure. He had underestimated her, and that realization was uncomfortable. He had spent his life surrounded by people who flattered him, who bowed to his wealth and influence. He was used to being the one in control, the one who decided the outcome of every interaction. Yet here was someone who had no wealth, no social status, and yet she had captured the room in a way he never could. It was a humbling experience, even if he did not want to admit it. Guests began to approach her cautiously, asking if she had studied music formally, or if this was just a natural talent. She smiled politely, explaining that she had learned to play at home and had always loved music. Her words were simple, but they carried a quiet honesty that made people listen more closely. The crowd realized that her skill was not only impressive but also genuine. There was no pretense, no showmanship designed to impress. Just pure, heartfelt music that spoke to anyone willing to listen. As the evening continued, the millionaire made a subtle gesture, signaling her to return to the piano. He wanted to see more, to test the limits of her talent. The waitress nodded politely, setting down her tray and walking back toward the piano. This time, the atmosphere was different. She was no longer nervous. Instead, there was a quiet determination in her steps. She knew what she could do, and she was ready to share it again. The guests, sensing something special was about to happen, quieted immediately. Even the waiters paused in their duties, and the murmurs of conversation faded to a respectful silence. The waitress seated herself at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys for just a moment. Then she began to play. This time, her music was more expressive, more confident. Each note carried a story, a depth that seemed to reach every corner of the room. The melody was intricate yet flowing, a perfect balance of emotion and skill that left everyone listening in rapt attention. As she played, the millionaire's expression softened. He had seen many talented people in his life, but few had ever moved him in such a way. The music was not just beautiful, it was powerful. It demanded attention without force, capturing hearts without demanding praise. The guests watched, their initial skepticism replaced by admiration and even a hint of envy. They realized that this young woman had something they could not buy, something that could not be taught in the finest schools or learned through money alone. The waitress's fingers danced across the keys, creating a symphony of sound that seemed to fill the room with emotion. The melody rose and fell, soft and tender one moment, bold and commanding the next. Her confidence grew with each note, and the audience could feel it. The once dismissive whispers now turned into awed silence. The room was no longer a restaurant filled with wealthy guests. It had become a space of shared experience, a moment suspended in time where everyone was connected through music. Some guests wiped their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty of the performance. Others leaned forward, unable to take their eyes off her hands as they moved with precision and grace. The millionaire, who had challenged her initially for amusement, now felt something unfamiliar: respect. He realized that wealth and status were fleeting, but talent and courage could leave a lasting impression. For the first time in a long while, he was genuinely impressed, not because someone had obeyed him, but because someone had surpassed all expectations. The waitress played for what felt like hours, though it was only a few minutes. She allowed the music to flow naturally, her emotions guiding the melody rather than any need to impress. The audience could sense her authenticity, and that connection made the performance unforgettable. Each chord, each gentle tap on the keys, carried a piece of her story, her dreams, her struggles, her quiet resilience. It was impossible not to be drawn in, to feel the emotions she poured into every note. As the final chord echoed through the room, there was a moment of stillness. The audience sat frozen, savoring the last vibration of the piano strings. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started as a soft clap, hesitant and cautious, and grew into a thunderous ovation that filled every corner of the restaurant. Guests rose from their seats, cheering and clapping, some whistling in admiration. The waitress, though slightly flushed from the intensity of the performance, smiled modestly, acknowledging the appreciation with quiet grace. The millionaire stood as well, clapping his hands and nodding in respect. He approached her carefully, a small smile playing on his lips. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his voice low but sincere. "That was remarkable." The words were simple, yet they carried weight. They were more than praise. They were an acknowledgement of the truth he had tried to avoid, that talent, courage, and heart could not be measured by money or status. The guests continued to discuss the performance, many expressing disbelief that someone so young and seemingly ordinary could possess such extraordinary skill. Some asked how long she had been playing. Others shared their surprise at her composure under pressure. The waitress answered each question with humility, her focus remaining on the music rather than herself. She knew that the performance had been a shared experience, a moment that belonged not just to her, but to everyone who had listened. Throughout the evening, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. What had begun as a display of wealth and power transformed into a celebration of talent and courage. The millionaire, once confident in his ability to control the room, realized that the most memorable moments could not be orchestrated or bought. They had to be earned, experienced, and felt. As the night went on, the waitress continued her duties, moving among the tables with a new sense of confidence. Guests now looked at her differently, not just as a server but as someone extraordinary, someone who had the power to leave a lasting impression on everyone present. The experience had changed her too. She had faced a challenge, performed under pressure, and shared her gift with the world. And in doing so, she had discovered a strength within herself that she had not fully realized before. The millionaire watched her from across the room, a mix of admiration and humility in his expression. He had challenged her for amusement, expecting laughter and embarrassment, but instead, he witnessed something far more profound. He understood, finally, that true greatness could come from anywhere and anyone, regardless of social status or wealth. By the end of the evening, the restaurant felt different. It was no longer just a place of luxury and etiquette. It had become a space where talent, courage, and authenticity were celebrated. The young waitress had transformed the night, leaving a mark on everyone who had been present. The memory of her performance would linger long after the guests had left, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected individuals could inspire the most profound moments. And as the last guests departed, the millionaire remained for a moment, reflecting on the lesson he had learned. The evening had been intended as entertainment at someone else's expense, but it turned into a humbling experience that reminded him of the power of human talent and spirit. The waitress had not only played the piano, she had played the hearts of everyone in the room, leaving them astonished and deeply moved. The next evening, the restaurant was quiet and peaceful, the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting off polished surfaces. The young waitress moved among the tables, serving guests with her usual calm and careful manner. Her previous performance had not been forgotten. Whispers about her talent had already started to circulate in the city, and some guests arrived early, hoping to catch a glimpse of the young woman who had astonished a room full of people with nothing but her music. The millionaire, who had been at the heart of that first challenge, entered the restaurant with a different expression than before. Gone was the smugness that had once marked his presence. Now, there was a quiet curiosity, mixed with a cautious admiration. He had spent the last 24 hours replaying her performance in his mind, unable to shake the image of her focused hands and the soft yet powerful melody she had created. He wanted to see her again, not as a means of entertainment, but to understand more about this extraordinary talent that had completely surprised him. The waitress noticed him immediately, a subtle recognition passing between them. She greeted him politely, her smile gentle and unassuming. He nodded in return, still processing the unexpected turn of events from the previous evening. The restaurant was busy, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Guests who had been present during her first performance lingered, eager to see if her skills were as remarkable as they had claimed. When the meal service slowed, the millionaire approached her, speaking quietly so that no one else could overhear. "Would you play for us again tonight?" he asked, his tone different from before. There was no hint of mockery now, only genuine interest. The waitress paused for a moment, considering his request. She could feel the pressure, the unspoken expectations of the room, but she also recognized an opportunity to continue sharing her gift. With a nod, she agreed, and the millionaire gestured toward the grand piano in the corner of the restaurant. As she walked toward the piano, her steps were steady and confident. The guests watched in silence, curious and respectful. This was not a performance to impress them. It was an offering, a sharing of something deeply personal and beautiful. She seated herself at the piano, fingers hovering just above the keys, taking a moment to center herself. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft and tentative, inviting the listeners into a world of calm and introspection. But as she continued, her confidence grew, and the music became more expressive. Each chord carried emotion, telling a story that words could never fully capture. Guests leaned forward, mesmerized, as the melody unfolded with grace and fluidity. The young waitress was no longer merely a server. She was a storyteller, using the piano as her voice, her hands weaving a narrative that captivated everyone in the room. The millionaire watched her intently, noting the subtle movements of her fingers and the delicate expressions on her face. He had seen many talented performers in his life, but few had the ability to convey emotion so effortlessly. There was something genuine in her music, something that could not be taught or purchased. He realized that her talent was more than skill. It was a reflection of her character, her determination, and her passion. Guests began to respond to the music in different ways. Some closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them, feeling emotions they had long buried. Others whispered to each other, amazed at the complexity and beauty of what they were hearing. Even the staff paused in their duties, captivated by the performance. The atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted entirely. It was no longer just a place of dining and socializing. It had become a space of shared experience, where music connected every person in the room. The young waitress's hands moved with precision and grace, each note deliberate yet flowing naturally. She played with a balance of strength and delicacy, the music rising and falling like a gentle tide. The melody told a story of quiet perseverance, of hope and resilience, capturing the essence of her own journey. The audience could sense the depth behind each note, the countless hours of practice, the moments of doubt, and the triumph of determination. As she reached the climax of her piece, the music swelled, filling the room with a rich, full sound. The guests were held in rapt attention, caught between admiration and awe. The millionaire, who had been so confident the day before, now sat silently, watching with an intensity that reflected both respect and wonder. He had underestimated her before, but now he understood that her talent was genuine and extraordinary. The melody softened, flowing into a gentle conclusion, leaving the room in a profound silence. There was no immediate applause, only a lingering sense of wonder. The guests exchanged glances, realizing that they had witnessed something rare and special. Slowly, the first claps began, hesitant but growing steadily into a heartfelt ovation. The young waitress smiled softly, acknowledging the applause with grace, her heart swelling with quiet pride. The millionaire stood as well, clapping and nodding, a subtle smile on his face. He approached her after the performance, speaking quietly but sincerely. "Your talent is remarkable," he said. "I did not expect this, but I am glad I was wrong." The words were simple, yet they carried weight. They were more than a compliment. They were a recognition of her courage, skill, and authenticity. Throughout the evening, the young waitress continued to perform, each piece showcasing different aspects of her talent. She played with a mixture of elegance and emotion, capturing the attention and hearts of everyone present. Guests began to see her not just as a server but as an artist, someone capable of transforming a simple evening into an unforgettable experience. The atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted completely, with a sense of shared appreciation and admiration replacing the previous air of sophistication and judgment. The millionaire observed quietly, learning a valuable lesson. He realized that talent and character could not be judged by appearances or social status. He had challenged her for amusement, expecting a spectacle, but he had found something far more profound. He had witnessed genuine skill, courage, and emotion, and he could not help but feel a sense of humility and respect. As the night drew to a close, the guests began to leave, many offering words of praise and encouragement to the young waitress. She accepted their compliments with a modest smile, knowing that the true reward was the experience itself and the connection she had forged through her music. The millionaire lingered for a moment, reflecting on the unexpected turn of events and the impression she had left on him and everyone else in the room. The young waitress returned to her duties with a renewed sense of confidence. Her previous performance and the reactions it had inspired had changed something within her. She knew that her music had the power to move people, to create moments of shared beauty and emotion. The restaurant, once just a place of work, had become a stage for her talent, a space where her voice could be heard and felt. That evening, the millionaire left the restaurant with a new perspective. He had challenged someone he underestimated and discovered a depth of talent and humanity that he had not anticipated. He realized that true greatness could come from anywhere, and that sometimes the most remarkable individuals were those who quietly nurtured their gifts away from the spotlight. The young waitress had once again astonished the room, not just with her skill but with her courage, humility, and authenticity. She had proven that talent, when paired with heart and determination, could leave a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. And as the doors closed behind the last guests, the memory of her performance lingered, a quiet reminder that brilliance often emerges in the most unexpected places, and that the power of music could transform even the most ordinary moments into something extraordinary. The next evening, the restaurant was buzzing more than usual. Word had spread about the young waitress who had captured a room with her piano playing, and people came in anticipation, eager to witness her talent firsthand. Guests arrived earlier, whispering with excitement, their eyes scanning the room for the woman who had astonished everyone. There was an energy in the air, a quiet tension mixed with anticipation, as if something remarkable was about to happen again. The waitress moved among the tables, carrying trays with the same gentle grace she had shown before. She smiled politely, nodding to the guests who greeted her, but she felt a slight weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders. She had played before, and her performance had moved many people, but now, knowing that everyone was watching with heightened curiosity, she felt the pressure grow. Still, she reminded herself of the joy she found in music, the way it allowed her to express what words could not. That thought gave her calm and courage. The millionaire entered the restaurant with a different presence than before. Gone was his previous arrogance. Instead, he carried a quiet curiosity and a genuine respect for the young woman's skill. He had spent the last 24 hours thinking about her, replaying her performance in his mind, and feeling a strange sense of admiration he had rarely experienced. He wanted to see her again, not as a challenge, but as a witness to something truly remarkable. As the evening progressed, he discreetly signaled for her to come to the piano. Guests watched eagerly, whispering with excitement. The waitress nodded, understanding the unspoken request. She put down her tray and walked toward the grand piano, her steps steady and composed. She felt a mix of anticipation and calm determination, ready to share her music once again. Seating herself at the piano, she let her fingers hover over the keys, centering herself. Then slowly she began to play. The first notes were soft, gentle, almost like an invitation to the room to pause and listen. As the melody grew, her confidence became more evident. Each note was deliberate yet flowing, each chord telling a story of patience, hope, and quiet strength. The guests leaned in, drawn to the music as if it were speaking directly to them. The millionaire watched closely, noting the elegance and control in her hands. He realized that this was not simply skill. It was something deeper, something that could not be bought or taught. He had seen many talented performers, but few had the ability to convey emotion so effortlessly. Her music carried a depth that resonated with every listener, creating an atmosphere of shared wonder and amazement. As the performance continued, the room fell into a focused silence. Guests stopped their conversations, waiters paused their duties, and even the staff in the kitchen seemed to lean in, listening. The music filled every corner of the restaurant, weaving through the air with a power that was gentle yet undeniable. The young waitress played with both precision and feeling, each note reflecting her dedication, passion, and love for the art. The melody rose and fell, sometimes tender and soft, sometimes bold and commanding. Her hands moved with skill and confidence, creating a harmony that captivated every listener. The guests were spellbound, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the sound, others exchanging amazed glances. The energy in the room had shifted completely. The restaurant, once a place of formal elegance and conversation, had become a shared space of emotion and beauty. The millionaire's expression changed as he watched her. He had intended to challenge her for his own amusement, expecting to provoke embarrassment or nervous mistakes. Instead, he saw someone who had turned the situation into a moment of genuine artistry. His pride had been humbled, and he felt a strange mixture of respect and awe. He understood, finally, that true talent could not be judged by appearances or social standing. It was something felt and experienced. Some guests whispered softly to each other, expressing disbelief at her skill. Others were visibly moved, wiping away tears or nodding in quiet appreciation. The music spoke to them in ways words never could. It carried emotion, storytelling, and authenticity. The young waitress's performance was more than entertainment. It was a connection, a shared experience that brought everyone in the room together in awe and admiration. The young woman's fingers moved with grace and confidence, navigating the keys effortlessly. She played with a balance of strength and subtlety, letting the music breathe and expand naturally. Each chord carried a piece of her story, a reflection of her life, her perseverance, and her quiet determination. The audience could sense the sincerity behind every note, and that authenticity made her performance unforgettable. As the music reached its peak, the melody swelled and resonated throughout the restaurant. Guests were completely captivated, leaning forward, eyes fixed on her hands as they danced across the keys. The atmosphere was electric, filled with admiration and awe. The millionaire watched silently, experiencing a rare moment of humility and genuine appreciation. He had underestimated her once, but now he could not deny the impact of her talent. When she reached the final notes, the room held its breath. There was a moment of stillness, a collective pause as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the space, starting softly and building into a thunderous ovation. Guests rose from their seats, clapping, cheering, and whistling. The young waitress smiled gently, acknowledging their appreciation without arrogance, her heart swelling with quiet pride. The millionaire stood and joined the applause, nodding in respect. He approached her after the performance, speaking quietly but sincerely. "Your talent is extraordinary," he said. "I never expected this, but I am grateful I was wrong." His words carried weight, not just as a compliment, but as a recognition of her courage, skill, and authenticity. Throughout the rest of the evening, the young waitress continued to play, each piece revealing new layers of her ability and emotion. Guests were captivated, many returning to their tables with a renewed sense of wonder and admiration. The restaurant had transformed from a space of formality into a place of shared experience and celebration. Music had created a bond among everyone present, a moment of unity and beauty that transcended social boundaries. The millionaire observed quietly, reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He realized that wealth and status could not create moments of genuine awe. They could not command respect or admiration in the way that true talent could. The young waitress had reminded him that greatness often emerged from unexpected places, and that courage, skill, and authenticity were more powerful than money or influence. By the end of the night, guests left with stories to tell, inspired and moved by the young woman who had astonished them with her music. The young waitress returned to her duties, carrying herself with a newfound confidence. She had shared her gift, touched hearts, and proven that even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary moments could occur. The millionaire lingered for a moment, reflecting on the unexpected experience. He had challenged someone he underestimated, and in doing so, he had witnessed the beauty of talent, courage, and humility. The young waitress had not only played the piano, she had played the emotions and hearts of everyone in the room, leaving an impression that would not soon be forgotten. As the doors closed behind the last guests, the atmosphere of the restaurant remained charged with the memory of her performance. The young waitress had transformed a simple evening into an extraordinary one, proving that passion, dedication, and authenticity could create moments of lasting wonder. She had astonished the room once again, and the memory of her music would linger in the hearts of everyone who had been there, a testament to the power of talent and courage. The next evening, the restaurant was filled with anticipation like never before. Word of the young waitress's extraordinary piano talent had spread far and wide. Guests arrived early, whispering excitedly to one another, eager to see the woman who had transformed a simple dinner into an unforgettable experience. The air was charged with expectation, and even the staff seemed to move with a sense of purpose, aware that something remarkable was about to unfold. The young waitress moved among the tables as she had done countless times before, carrying trays with poise and grace. She greeted guests with her soft smile, her calm composure hiding the flutter of nerves inside her. Though she had performed before, she knew that the eyes of the room were now watching her closely, each guest waiting for another astonishing performance. She reminded herself to focus on the music, to let her hands speak the words that could not be said aloud. The thought grounded her and eased her tension. The millionaire entered the room with a subtle air of expectation, quietly observing the scene. Unlike before, he did not carry arrogance or smugness. Instead, his expression reflected genuine interest and a hint of humility. He had spent the last 2 evenings thinking about the young waitress, reflecting on her talent and the impression she had left on him and everyone in the room. This time, he wanted to witness her music unfold without attempting to challenge or test her. He was simply curious and eager to see her perform once more. As the evening service slowed, he discreetly gestured toward her. Understanding his silent request, she placed her tray down and walked to the grand piano in the corner. Each step was deliberate, full of quiet confidence. The guests fell silent, sensing the beginning of something extraordinary. The restaurant seemed to hold its collective breath as she seated herself and rested her fingers lightly on the keys, pausing for a brief moment to find her center. Then she began to play. The music started softly, drawing the listeners in gently. The first notes floated in the air like a whisper, delicate and inviting. As her fingers moved across the keys, the melody grew richer, more intricate, yet always flowing naturally. Each note carried emotion, telling a story that could be understood by anyone, regardless of age, background, or social status. The audience leaned forward, drawn into the intimate world she was creating through her music. The millionaire watched closely, noting the skill, control, and emotional depth behind each note. He realized that her performance was more than technical mastery. It was an expression of heart and soul. He had seen talented musicians before, but few could convey genuine feeling with such clarity. Her music was not about impressing anyone or seeking praise. It was about communicating something deeply personal, and yet universally understood. This understanding filled him with respect and admiration. The melody rose and fell, gentle and powerful in turns. The young waitress played with elegance and precision, each chord perfectly balanced. The music told a story of resilience, hope, and quiet strength. The guests were mesmerized. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others exchanged awed glances, unable to find words to describe what they were feeling. The room was completely absorbed in the moment, united by the beauty of her performance. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving with a natural rhythm that made the melody seem effortless. The depth of emotion behind each note was evident to everyone present. They could sense the hours of practice, the dedication, and the passion that had shaped this young woman into a remarkable musician. The atmosphere was no longer that of a restaurant. It had become a space of shared emotion, where every listener was part of something rare and unforgettable. The millionaire, who had once challenged her out of amusement, now sat silently, utterly captivated. He reflected on his earlier assumptions and realized how wrong he had been to underestimate her. His mind replayed the moments of her previous performances, each memory reinforcing the truth that talent, courage, and authenticity could not be measured by wealth or status. He felt humbled, aware that this young woman had given him a lesson he would not forget. As the performance progressed, the melody reached a powerful crescendo. The notes filled the room with intensity and emotion, carrying a sense of triumph and joy. The audience was held in rapt attention, completely immersed in the music. Some guests wiped away tears, while others simply watched, their faces reflecting awe and admiration. The young waitress had the remarkable ability to touch hearts without words, to communicate through music what no speech could convey. The final chords resonated through the restaurant, lingering in the air like a soft echo. There was a pause, a moment of silence in which everyone absorbed the beauty of what they had just experienced. Then, the applause erupted. It started softly, tentative at first, then swelled into a thunderous ovation that filled every corner of the room. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and whistling. The young waitress acknowledged their appreciation with a humble smile, her heart swelling with quiet pride. The millionaire joined the applause, his expression one of genuine respect. He approached her carefully, speaking with sincerity. "You are extraordinary," he said. "I underestimated you, and I am grateful for the lesson." That was remarkable. The words were simple, yet their meaning was profound. They were an acknowledgement of her courage, skill, and authenticity, a recognition that could not be bought or earned through status. Throughout the rest of the evening, the young waitress continued to play, each piece revealing more layers of her talent and emotion. The guests were captivated, many returning to their tables with renewed admiration and inspiration. The restaurant had been transformed into a place where music connected people in ways that transcended wealth and status. Her performances were no longer just entertainment. They had become a shared experience that left a lasting impression on everyone present. The millionaire observed quietly, reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He realized that true talent and greatness could come from anyone, regardless of their background or social position. He had attempted to challenge her for amusement, expecting to provoke failure, yet she had responded with grace, skill, and courage. His pride had been humbled, and he now understood that admiration and respect must be earned through authenticity, not status. As the evening drew to a close, the guests departed, speaking excitedly of the performances they had witnessed. Many offered words of praise and encouragement to the young waitress, acknowledging the impact she had made on them. She accepted their compliments with humility, knowing that the true reward was the connection she had created through her music. The restaurant, once just a place of work, had become a stage for her talent, a space where her voice could be heard and felt. The millionaire lingered for a moment, reflecting on the unexpected experience. He had challenged someone he underestimated, and in doing so, he had witnessed the beauty of courage, skill, and authenticity. The young waitress had not only played the piano, she had played the hearts of everyone in the room, leaving an impression that would be remembered long after the night ended. By the time the restaurant closed, the atmosphere remained charged with the memory of her performance. She had once again astonished the room, demonstrating that dedication, passion, and heart could transform even ordinary moments into something extraordinary. The young waitress had shown that true talent could inspire, connect, and leave a lasting mark on everyone who witnessed it. And as she returned to her duties, she carried a quiet confidence, knowing that her music had the power to touch the world, one note at a time. The days that followed felt different for everyone who had been in that restaurant. Something had shifted. The story of the young waitress and her piano spread beyond the walls of the dining hall. Guests told their friends. Short clips recorded on phones quietly made their way around the city. People spoke about the night a simple challenge turned into something unforgettable. For the young waitress, life did not suddenly become glamorous. She still woke up early. She still tied her hair back neatly and put on the same uniform. She still carried trays, cleaned tables, and greeted guests with the same polite smile. But inside something had changed. She walked with a little more confidence. Not pride, not arrogance. Just the calm knowledge that she had faced a room full of doubt and had answered it with music. The restaurant manager began receiving calls. Some people wanted to reserve tables specifically on nights she was working. Others asked if there would be live piano again. At first, the manager was unsure what to do. The restaurant had always been known for fine dining, not performances. But it was clear that the music had brought something special. It had brought heart. One evening, before the dinner rush began, the millionaire arrived earlier than usual. He did not sit at his usual table. Instead, he asked to speak with her privately. When she approached, there was no tension in her face. She simply listened. "I have been thinking," he said carefully. "You deserve more than just a corner piano in a restaurant. Your talent should be heard in bigger places." She looked at him, surprised but calm. She had never imagined her music reaching beyond the small world she lived in. Piano had always been personal, something she played for herself after long days. The idea of bigger stages felt distant and almost unreal. He continued, speaking with sincerity. He had connections, he explained. Concert organizers, music teachers, people who could guide someone with real skill. He was not offering charity. He was offering opportunity. And for the first time since he had met her, there was no trace of pride in his voice, only respect. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she thanked him and asked for time to think. That night, after her shift ended, she sat alone at the piano. The restaurant was quiet, chairs stacked, lights dimmed. She played softly, not for applause, not for recognition, but for herself. The music flowed gently, filled with thought and emotion. She thought about her childhood, about the old piano at home that had slightly uneven keys, about practicing late at night while the world slept, about moments of doubt, when she wondered if music was just a dream too big for her reality. And now, here she was, standing at the edge of something unexpected. The next evening, the restaurant was full again. People waited eagerly, hoping she would play. The manager had officially announced that there would be live piano performances twice a week. It was a small step, but it meant something. When she sat down at the piano that night, the room fell silent faster than ever before. She no longer felt like someone being tested. She felt like someone sharing a gift. The first piece she played was different. It was stronger, more confident. There was joy in it, but also depth. The guests listened with full attention. Some recorded quietly, but most simply watched, fully present in the moment. The millionaire sat at a table near the piano, not in the spotlight, but simply as a listener. Halfway through the performance, something unexpected happened. An elderly man in the audience began to quietly cry. When someone asked if he was okay, he smiled and said the music reminded him of his late wife, who used to play the piano at home. The room softened at that moment. It was no longer just about skill or surprise. It was about connection. When she finished, the applause was warm and heartfelt. Not explosive like the first night. Not shocked. Just deeply appreciative. And that meant more. After the guests left, the millionaire approached her again. This time, she did not need time to think. "I will accept your offer," she said softly. "But only if I can continue working here for now. This place is where everything changed." He smiled and agreed. Arrangements were made in the weeks that followed. She began meeting with a professional music coach twice a week. She was introduced to small community events where she could perform outside the restaurant. Nothing too big. Nothing overwhelming. Just steady steps forward. The restaurant continued to host her performances. What started as a challenge meant to embarrass her had become a tradition. Guests would dine and then quietly turn their chairs toward the piano when it was time. The staff felt proud. The manager often stood near the back, smiling as the room filled with music. The millionaire changed too. He no longer saw himself as someone who controlled the room. Instead, he became someone who supported talent when he recognized it. He learned that influence could be used to lift others instead of test them. That lesson stayed with him. Months later, she performed at a small public hall for the first time. It was not grand or luxurious, but it was filled with people who genuinely loved music. When she walked onto that stage, she felt nervous but not afraid. She had already faced a room full of doubt once. Now she faced a room full of belief. Her fingers touched the keys, and the music began. It carried everything with it. The challenge, the surprise, the applause, the quiet nights of practice, the restaurant lights, the lessons learned. Every note felt honest. In the audience, sitting quietly in the back row, was the millionaire. He did not tell anyone he was there. He did not need attention. He simply listened, proud not of himself, but of her courage. When the performance ended, the applause was steady and strong. She bowed gently, her heart full. She knew this was only the beginning. Back at the restaurant, life continued. New guests came. New stories were told. But those who had been there on the first night would never forget it. The moment a simple challenge turned into something unforgettable. The moment a quiet waitress proved that talent does not ask for permission to shine. She still worked some evenings, still tied her hair back neatly, still carried trays with care. But now, when she walked past the piano, it was no longer just furniture in the corner. It was a reminder of courage. And the millionaire, whenever he visited, no longer carried a smirk. He carried respect. The whole room had once been astonished. But in the end, what remained was not shock. It was admiration. It was growth. It was the understanding that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected people. And in the quiet moments after the applause fades, what truly matters is not who challenged whom, but who had the courage to answer with heart.